Yes, precious cargo.
Recording in progress.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Darcy Drager. I am the chair of the Morris County Democratic Committee, and we are joined with Rebecca Bennett, who is running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District. Our screening committee today includes Bill Kersey, Andy Meisner, Mike Delamater, Gary Colucci, Brian Considine, and also Amalia Duarte. And we are going to kick it off right now with our first question, Rebecca, where we're exploring your background and readiness to serve. So please tell us a little bit about yourself. What inspired you to run for Congress, and what is the core message or vision you hope to communicate to voters?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you everyone for taking some time out of your Sunday to meet with me. I really appreciate it. So, just a quick background on me. I'm a former military veteran. I'm a former Navy pilot and test pilot, healthcare leader, mom of two. I served in the military for over 15 years and I led missions, people, and teams all over the world. I am a former Navy helicopter pilot. I flew the Navy version of the Army Black Hawk. And, from there, I decided to transition into the private sector. So I went to Wharton, got my MBA and moved into healthcare where I've been working ever since. I worked in a bunch of different areas of healthcare. I started out my career working for Johnson and Johnson, where I focused mostly in oncology. I had the chance to work on J&J's first commercial cell therapy for a blood cancer called multiple myeloma and took that through FDA approval. And then I moved into digital health and startups where I've been working ever since. I worked in women's health, I worked in gastrointestinal care, but my focus has really been on taking these small, innovative companies and partnering with existing care delivery to solve our access issues, lower our total cost of care, and increase our quality. I'm also a mom to two girls, and my husband, who's a fellow military veteran and union member. We're raising our girls right here in the district. And, I'll just say for me, the reason I got involved in politics in the first place is because I was serving on active duty the first time that Trump got elected back in 2016. And that was a really pivotal moment for me. And so I started out volunteering as a grassroots volunteer doing a lot of stuff I know people on this call have been doing for a long time, door knocking and phone banking. And then it was really after Harris lost in 2024 that I really felt this calling to lean in. And it's because I love this country and I put my life on the line for this country. And there is no way that I was going to sit on the sidelines with everything going on in Washington. This Trump administration is destroying our democracy. They are enriching themselves and they are making our problems worse. And so, to the question on, what's my message? My message is that we can do both things. We can hold this Trump administration accountable for its corruption and its lawlessness, and we can also solve the issues that we are facing in this country, which means tackling our cost of living crisis, making sure our healthcare system is working for all of us and protecting our rights and freedoms.
Excellent. Andy, would you like to take the second question?
Hi, Rebecca. Good morning from Mount Olive.
Hey, Andy.
Congress requires negotiation and coalition building. Can you give an example from your career where you successfully worked across differences to achieve a goal?
Yeah, of course. So the one that comes to mind for me is this was back when I was in the military, and one of the exercises that I participated in was this exercise called RIMPAC, which is Rim of the Pacific is what it stands for. It's a massive, I believe it's the largest multinational exercise that the Navy participates in. And I got asked 6 weeks before it was going to start to basically figure out how we were going to be able to do the first time ever helicopter detachment on a brand new type of ship that the Navy had just gotten fielded, which was the Littoral Combat Ship. It's one of the smaller ships that we have. And so myself and then, one other person were put in charge of this detachment and asked to basically say, hey, go figure this out. And so, we very quickly put together a plan on how we were going to be able to actually get a full detachment of aircraft and personnel to be able to go underway on this ship to be able to get this mission done, which we did. And, we were able to get 100% mission completion rate, but had the chance to work with over 30 different countries. I mean, it's really, truly, if you think about, all the countries that touched that piece of it, and we had some folks come over from our NATO allies and friends too. But as you can imagine, there was a lot of things that had to go into figuring out how we were going to be able to get that done and execute the mission. And so that's the one that just comes to mind. But, I'll just say in general, for me, that's the beauty of serving in the military is that you get to work with people from all backgrounds and all walks of life, and it's truly a melting pot of the country. And you're just there as Americans to get the job done. And that is my mindset that I brought into every leadership opportunity that I've had, is figuring out how to get to know people, what motivates them, and to be able to find ways to solve problems and move the ball forward. And that's the mindset that I'll bring to office as well.
Excellent. Amalia.
Hey, good morning, Rebecca. Good to see
Hey.
you.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question is, what do you identify as the most urgent legislative need for CD7 as a whole, and how would you address it during your first year in office if elected?
Yeah. This is a tough one because I feel like, there's always a lot of things, but I'll say the most important thing that I'm hearing from people is cost of living and affordability. And I'll just say, for me, this is real for my family too. I don't come from a powerful political family or wealthy family, and I really consider my life a story of the American dream, because I was able to go to college on an ROTC scholarship, and I worked two jobs on top of that to be able to pay the bills. I used a GI Bill for my MBA. We bought our house with a VA loan. And so, I am where I am because of programs like that. But I say all that to say that, these issues are impacting my family too. My husband's a federal employee. We are not wealthy people. And so, I understand the challenges that we're facing because my family is dealing with them too. And we are really living through a cost of living crisis in this country right now. Everything is more expensive: childcare, elder care, housing, energy, groceries, healthcare. I could go on and on and on, but it really has been very frustrating because that's what Trump ran on. He ran on lowering cost of living, and instead he is off getting us into yet another overseas war in Iran without actually having any sort of, a congressional approval. But I would say on the, cost of living pieces, there are a couple of specific things that I've proposed for kind of by day one, first priorities there. Number one is childcare. So, when my two girls were in full-time childcare, we were paying over $3,500 a month for them to be in childcare. I mean, that is a mortgage for families. It is an astronomical amount of money that we're asking families to pay. And I know so many families that are dropping out of the workforce or having fewer kids because they just can't afford to pay for it. And it doesn't just impact those families, it impacts our economy as well. We lose over $120 billion a year in economic productivity because of our childcare issues. So my proposal is that we are going to cap the cost of childcare at 7% for all families based on their income. And we're going to pay for that by undoing some of the Trump tax cuts. The next one is energy prices. I hear this one all the time as well. Probably same for you guys, but our energy bill over the summer went up by like $200. My husband was like, did our house break? Like, what happened to our energy bill? And so if I rolled out a full policy proposal, both on, what I'm calling a family plan, which includes the childcare piece. I've also got a full policy proposal on energy prices, but specifically want to call out, one of the reasons we're seeing this massive increase in our energy prices going up is because of AI data centers. And it's not fair that we are subsidizing the price for them when that is the reason we're seeing this massive uptake in demand. So my proposal is that we are going to have a separate AI data center rate class, and to make sure that they are paying their fair share for the increase in energy demand that we're seeing. I've got some other stuff that I proposed as well. And then the third one is healthcare. So this is another one I hear all the time from people. People have shared their stories with me on how much their specific premiums have gone up from the Affordable Care Act on the exchange. And people, even setting that aside, I was talking to somebody earlier this week. He has a small business he owns. He has 10 employees. He said his premiums for them have gone up. 3 years ago, went up 40%. Last year, it went up 50%. This year, it went up 60%. I mean, he's just like, I don't know how to do this. Like, he's like, I want to make sure that my employees have access to healthcare, but like, I just cannot afford this anymore. And so that is the story I'm hearing over and over and over again. It's just our healthcare premiums are too expensive. Healthcare is too expensive. And so my immediate proposal is that we are going to make sure we get those subsidies back, so that way people are not having to drop out of the exchange. They can have access to quality, affordable healthcare. But longer term, I do think that we need a public option because it gives people opportunity to have choice, and no one should go bankrupt or because of medical debt, and everyone deserves quality access to affordable healthcare.
Excellent. Thank you. Bill.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Bennett, and welcome to Morris County, a fellow veteran, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you for your service. Yeah.
Yeah. Here in the Congressional District 7, what do you see as the most pressing challenges facing Morris County's communities, and how would you use your role in Congress to address them?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. I've got a couple of things, and just hearing from people directly, I would say the one that's certainly top of mind from folks right now is the ICE detention facility that is going into Roxbury, and I would say making sure that we are doing everything in our power, working with Governor Sherrill and her administration, but working with the rest of the delegation to try to keep that from going in. Honestly, I don't know what the exact situation is going to be by the time we flip the seat, but doing everything we possibly can to keep that from going in. We know that people don't want it there. Even the Republican town council in town voted against it. So there's very clear bipartisan opposition to that. So making sure that we are not having that detention facility in Roxbury, I would say, that's number one. And then, the other things I've heard from people are around Gateway. So, just because it's a massive infrastructure project. This is another example of where Tom Kean Jr. absolutely failed us. He should have been jumping up and down and screaming every single day when that funding got put on hold, and he was nowhere to be found. And we know this impacts our towns like Long Hill and Mount Olive and Mendham and Chester, because they are the ones that are really using NJ Transit to be able to get into the city, to be able to commute for work. The other thing on the infrastructure piece that I've heard is, I don't need to remind you all about the massive sinkhole that opened last year on I-80, but we do have massive infrastructure issues that we've got to be able to make sure that we're getting funding to make sure that we're securing our roads, but also our local and county roads as well. I'll just add on one piece of this. One of the committees that I do want to sit on is the transportation committee, because I want to make sure that we are getting the money for this infrastructure, because it is so critically important to our district and to our community. And then the last one I just want to add is around environmental protections. This is another thing that I've heard come up quite a bit around, flooding, specifically around Roxbury and Wharton because of the Passaic River and the watershed there. So just making sure that we're getting the funding back for the environmental protections as well.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So, as you know, NJ7 presents a challenging electoral landscape. It is a competitive mix of suburban and conservative leaning communities, with Congressman Tom Kean holding the advantage of incumbency and a significant fundraising operation. So, describe your overall strategy for building a campaign that's capable of winning this district. We'd be interested in hearing how you plan to develop organizational strength, how you're building a competitive fundraising base, how you think you might leverage local support from Morris County Democrats to demonstrate electability, not just in Morris, but across the district.
Yeah, thanks, Darcy. I'll just say, kind of to the first point of it, I do think that my background uniquely positions me on being able to build this coalition. We do know that the district has about a 20,000 vote registration advantage for the Republican Party. And so, thinking about, we have to be able to get our base energized and engaged and turned out. We need to appeal to independent voters, and we've got to win over enough center-right Republicans, which I refer to them as Tom Kean Senior Republicans, because they voted for his dad, but they are deeply uncomfortable with what's happening with this Republican Party. And so, basically being able to appeal to them as well. So that's kind of, how do we do that? And so I would say my background as a military veteran, private sector leader, and mom uniquely positioned me on being able to do that. There was a study that was done that shows that Democrats that are veterans outperform other Democrats by about 6 points. And that's the margin in this race. I see it all the time in real life when I'm talking to people. It just changes the way they interact with me when they hear that I'm a military veteran. I was in Somerset the other day and down in Somerville, and somebody overheard that I was a Navy pilot, doesn't know anything else about me, and is like, I'm going to vote for you. And honestly, I was like, you might want to kick the tires a little bit, but but that's real. And it's because of how I've led and, putting country over party. And so I do think that resonates with people. On the actual mechanics of how are we going to do this, I kind of break this into 3 buckets. So, local engagement and support, national engagement and support, and then fundraising. So on the local piece, I'm very grateful to have the support of a number of local elected officials across the district. Just this past weekend, I won the Hunterdon County Convention, as well as the College Gems in New Jersey. Both voted to endorse me. I've been endorsed by a number of local elected officials, and we've had over 700 people sign up to volunteer with the campaign. So we're just seeing a lot of grassroots support and enthusiasm and momentum. And so we're going to continue to build on that. On the national piece, I've been endorsed by a number of national organizations and members of Congress. So I've been endorsed by veterans organizations like Vote Vets, New Politics. I've been endorsed by groups with private sector experience like Leadership Now. I've been endorsed by women's groups like Vote Mama, which is the group that helps get more moms elected to Congress. And I've been endorsed by a number of members of Congress, to include Pat Ryan, Jason Crow, Seth Moulton, and Chris Deluzio. And what that means for us is that if I'm our nominee, then we are going to have support coming in from these national organizations, because tying into our third point, which is fundraising, we know that the National Republican Party, this is the top pickup opportunity for us, which means it's the top defense or top hold for them. And we know there's going to be a ton of money pouring into this district on the right. And so we have to be able to raise the resources we need to be able to do that, to be able to make sure we're getting our message out. So, I'll just say those national organizations are going to come in, but we also have seen this historically that they were slow to come in for Sue, they were slow to come in for Tom. And so we also need to make sure that we have our own independent fundraising organization. So I'm proud to share I've raised over $2 million cycle to date. That's without taking a single dollar of corporate PAC money. I want people to know that I am doing this for the right reasons. When I'm in the room with the door closed, I'm making this decision just for all of us and what people think is the most important. And then I come back and communicate that with people. So not taking any corporate back money, but it's been through over 10,000 individual donors. And my, 89% of my donations are $100 or less. So we're really truly building a grassroots organization to make sure that we can, build the organization and then flip the seat. I did also put this in the pre-screening questionnaire, but we did look at the data. You guys know I'm a data nerd, and so is but we looked at the data to see, okay, where did people perform well, where did they underperform? Kane overperformed in Morris by about 2 percentage points. So he overperformed Trump by about 2 points. And looking specifically at the towns, I think it's the, looking at more of the maybe the redder parts, it's the lose by less, but then making sure that we're really driving resources and being as hyper local and specific as we can be for some of these towns to make sure that we are, eating into those margins of what we saw in the 2024 cycle.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's see. Now we have a candidate-specific question. I believe that's you, Gary.
Yeah, Rebecca, as a working parent and professional with experience in healthcare leadership, how would you address the challenges of affordable childcare and healthcare access for families in New Jersey of CD7? And what specific policies or initiatives would you propose to make these systems more supportive and substantial? Kind of a long question.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So the question's mostly, just to paraphrase, it's what can we do to help make sure our kids are getting access to healthcare? Is that kind of the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Affordable childcare and healthcare access for families in leadership. I mean, I think that you also touched upon this in some of your policy
Yeah.
discussions earlier. Do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, I will. I'll just say I won't, the childcare piece I know we touched on, and I feel very passionately about that one in particular, but I think there's other stuff that we can do as well. I'll say one of the things when you're asking the question that came to mind for me is what we're seeing from RFK Jr. and just the attack on public health and vaccines. And I worry about my girls. I don't know if you guys have seen the charts of, measles outbreaks are just like, basically it's a vertical line this year. And so to me, it's about making sure that, I know that New Jersey itself is participating in some Northeast regional alliances to make sure that we're still getting our kids the vaccinations that we need. But I do worry about this from a national perspective. And so I think making sure that we are holding RFK Jr. accountable, that we are making sure that they are not, they're basically following all the laws and regulations that they need to be able to do. And then, I would say more broadly, some of the other stuff I put in that policy I mentioned around families is making sure that kids have access to universal pre-K. We know that every dollar we invest in early childhood education, and I know I'm preaching to the choir with Amalia on the call here, but every dollar we invest in early childhood education is a $7 to $12 ROI. Like that is the place to be investing, is investing in our kids early to make sure that they are getting access to quality early childhood education. So that's another area that I've put out a policy on. And then the other one I just want to talk about is, which we don't talk about very much, but is postpartum support for women. So I'm very passionate about women's health. Reproductive rights, of course, are incredibly important, but what we're doing to support women across our entire lifespans. And an area that is chronically underfunded is postpartum support. Right now, if you have a kid, you go get a 6-week appointment and then they're just like, okay, you never, and it's crazy. And so I know Darcy's laughing, but it's like, but so the policy I've rolled out is we need expanded mental health support for moms. We need to make sure we're getting them pelvic floor physical therapy. I mean, there's a lot of other things that go in to the recovery of having a kid and being postpartum that is just not acknowledged or discussed or supported right now. So I would say that's another thing too, is just making sure we're really supporting the family, because it's hard to raise a family. It costs $35,000 a year right now in New Jersey to raise one kid. And so it's just, we are putting an incredible burden on families. And so we've got to do better.
Excellent. All right, now we have what we call a policy lightning round, and this
Okay.
is nothing worrisome. It's basically just sort of a check against your support, hopefully, of some basic democratic uh, planks of our platform. And so Andy is going to walk you through these and just a simple yes or no, ideally.
Okay, Rebecca, these are just yes or no's.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. So, Rebecca, do you support access to affordable health care for all, including protections for pre-existing conditions?
Yes.
Okay, I can repeat any of them, just let me know.
Okay.
Do you support policies that promote racial, gender, and LGBTQ plus equity?
Yes.
Do you support policies to address climate change and expand clean energy?
Yes.
Do you support reproductive rights, including a woman's right to choose?
Yes.
Do you support protecting and expanding voting rights?
Yes.
Do you support comprehensive immigration reform, including a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants?
Yes.
I'm sorry, did you hear the question?
Oh,
Oh,
I
she
said
said yes.
yes. Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you support federal investment in public education and affordable higher education?
Yes.
Do you support policies to protect Social Security, Medicare, and other essential programs for seniors?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a yes? I didn't hear you.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Do you support investment in broadband infrastructure and digital access to bridge the technology divide?
Yes.
Last question. Do you support federal initiatives for disaster resilience, climate adaptation, and infrastructure modernization?
Yes.
Okay, well done.
Thank you,
Darcy, I
Rebecca.
think that's to you.
Yeah. Well, now Brian is going to close out with our last official question before we open it up to the floor. So, Brian, take it
Okay.
away.
Welcome, Rebecca.
Hey,
This is
Brian.
this is probably going to be the hardest question.
Okay.
Campaigning is hard work. What about it makes you happy?
I will say I'm very mission driven, very service oriented. It's why I joined the military in the first place, is because I wanted to serve and give back in some way. And so for me, I've always just thrown myself at whatever the biggest, hardest problem is. And the house is on fire right now, and we've got to go put the fire out. And so to me, people say, "Oh, you must be so tired." And honestly, I just get so much energy, because this is the most important thing we can be doing right now, is flipping this seat and making sure that all of us working together are, this is one of the most important seats in the country to be able to take back the house. And so, working together to be able to flip this seat. And I honestly, like, it's been just such a pleasure getting to meet everybody. I mean, like Andy, us going knocking doors, and like I tell that story about how, like, I told you about the Ring voicemail thing all the time, but it's just like getting to meet everyone. There's so many good people that are volunteering their sweat equity and their time and their resources because they believe in this. And so to me, that's been the best part.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. All right, so that concludes the questions that we've laid out today. Oh, and Amalia reminds me, we did want to say this is a hotly contested primary. Would you be, if you are not the nominee, will you support the winner of the primary?
Yes, I will.
Excellent. All right. Opening the floor to our screening committee. Are there any other questions that you would like to flag before we wrap up?
Just Miss Bennett, how long have you lived in the district?
So I moved to New Jersey in 2019. My husband, that was when I got out of the military, is I moved to New Jersey, and then we bought our house in Montgomery Skillman area in early 2020. We got very lucky with the housing market time. We put the offer in February of 2020. And so at the time that I'm giving you a long-winded answer, but at the time that was the like old district line for the Tom Malinowski seat is, he was my representative then. And then when the district got redrawn, I got drawn out of it. And the line moved like a mile down the road. So we moved over the summer into like the new part of the district. So I'd say on and off, I've been here since 2020 is how long I've been here. But yeah, we moved to Bridgewater, so we're in the district now over the summer.
Hey, Rebecca, thank you for your service. And on a solemn topic, really, how has being a veteran and a service person around the world affected your view on world affairs,
Hmm.
and especially as it affects kind of the adventurism in Venezuela and other places now, of course, in Iran? How has your travels, your experience in the military around the world, kind of shaped your worldview and kind of how you would kind of think about things going forward?
Yeah, well, thanks, Andy. I mean, it is fundamental to how I think about this as an American. And, I'll just say that I don't know if you guys saw the videos going around, I think it was last week, where, Trump was basically like, oh, maybe people will die. Like, it is what it is. I mean, it is disgraceful. The fact that we have a president who has clearly no idea what it means to serve or be part of something bigger than himself and is just being so cavalier with American service members and people losing their lives is disgusting. And so to me, if we are ever going to put America's sons and daughters in harm's way, there needs to be a clear motivation. There needs to be actual congressional approval, and there needs to be a clear objective and clear exit strategy. And we have none of the above when we're talking about what's going on in Iran. I mean, it's really scary. And I was talking to a friend of mine who I still have friends that are serving on active duty. And I was talking to a friend of mine who basically is on one of the carriers that got to these are people's lives. You know what I mean? They're like basically the carrier got diverted to go to Venezuela, then they got diverted to go to the Middle East. They have not had hot water for 2 months. Like that, these ships do not have, they are not, you cannot just stay deployed in perpetuity. I mean, there's actual logistical constraints on what we're doing. And so we are just putting this massive burden on our service members. So anyway, I just say it is incredibly upsetting to me as an American, as a veteran. And I think that, again, like Tom Kean Jr. has absolutely failed us in this space. And we need a Congress that is going to hold this administration accountable. And this is just yet another example of how they are not doing that.
I'd like to jump in. I raised my hand to ask a question.
Yeah.
In 1 minute or less, Rebecca.
Yeah.
You did talk about or touch on the ICE detention center in Roxbury and how we're all trying to push back against that. How would you tackle immigration reform if you're elected?
Yeah. Thanks, Malia. So thank you for giving me 60 seconds for this one. I would say that, just taking a step back, like what we're seeing with ICE is completely unacceptable. I mean, the fact that we have masked unidentified agents that are detaining 5-year-olds, which I mean, my girls are 3 and 6, like that is literally every parent's worst nightmare is this idea of being separated from your kids. And so, they're detaining 5-year-olds, they are murdering Americans in broad daylight is unacceptable. I mean, it was not allowed in a war zone, it is not going to be allowed on American soil. And if you're in the military and you did something like what one of those people did, what would happen is they would get removed from duty and they would go through a proper investigation. And if there was fault found, the entire chain of command would be held accountable. And it's because you need to have good order and discipline in the organization. And what is happening right now is also undermining the ability of our qualified professional law enforcement to be able to do their jobs. I talk to police officers and they're telling me I've spent decades building relationships in these communities and people are scared to come to me now because of what is going on with ICE. And so, to your question on what we do, I think, number one is we've got to get ICE bring back in. They have got to follow the law of the land. They are held accountable like any other federal agent should be. And then longer term, we also have to recognize that part of the reason we're in this position is because we have failed to have meaningful immigration reform in this country for decades. And so we have got to work towards, I know there was questions earlier, but we have got to work towards having meaningful immigration reforms. That way people can, if they're staying here and they're working hard and they're doing their job, that they can live the life they want to be able to live here.
All right. I think that we are now bumping up on our time limit for today. Is there any other last question before we ask Rebecca to close it out? All right. We don't have any more questions at this time. What would be the last thing you would like to leave us with to think about?
Yeah, well, again, I want to thank you all for taking some time. Would love to have the support of the Morris County Dems. One other thing I just want to add is in the communications I sent out before is that I want to run this as a truly coordinated campaign. So if you all decide to endorse me, I just want to say that the way that I view this is really building on the success of the work that you all did last year and flipping Morris County blue and continuing to build on that into this year. And that to me, I don't, I'm not saying this is a Navy joke, but like rising tide lifts all boats, and all of us working together to make sure that we are helping get everyone elected from town council, all the way up to Cory Booker, but really doing it as a truly coordinated campaign. And just as the example, I got the endorsement with Hunterdon last Sunday. We're already doing that out there. And so, really want you guys to know that I'm in this and I plan to be just as I've been on the ground with you all, last year helping get people elected. That's my plan this year. And then if I'm so fortunate enough to represent us in office, that's how I'll lead when I'm in office as well. So, but yeah, I really appreciate the time and would love to have your support.
Great. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Rebecca. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.